Welcome to the next installment of the Big, Small, and Weird podcast, where we look at venture-funded companies that are potentially in the secondary market. My name is John Crossman for Vex Capital. However, I also represent two regulated companies, Vex Securities and Vex Registry. So please have a look at the disclaimer that I'll put up on the screen right now. It's very important. Give you a moment to pause it. And I'll also attach this to the description so you can see it in a PDF format. So this episode, we're going to talk about three companies. Our big company is Anduril. Our small company is Frame Security. And our weird company is Crew Carbon. So jumping right in, we'll start with Anduril Industries. This has been a big, Palmer Luckey's big defense tech company, and it's just raised $5 billion at a $61 billion valuation, which really allows it to, it's really doubled its valuation in under a year. Revenues hit $2.2 billion in 2025, and obviously it's still losing money. For 2026, they're expecting to lose $1.2 billion. So this is the largest private defense raise ever. And, in the same week, we get information from Trump's Golden Dome Missile Shield Initiative that it could cost as much as $1.2 trillion over 20 years. And Anduril is one of the 12 companies selected to build it. So just looking at this, there's only one company that you could really compare this to, and that would be General Atomics. General Atomics is very tightly held. I don't believe there's any secondary market whatsoever in that. And General Atomics often valued somewhere between $15 and $25 billion, so less than half of what we're seeing here in this valuation. And they have $3.2 billion in annual revenue, it's reported. And these are the makers of the Reaper drone, been very successful, and the EMALS aircraft launching system that they're using on the new aircraft carriers. So Anduril is in this space as well. They're making drones. They're really in the drone space, and they're also looking to do missile defense with drones as well. So this is the new when it comes to defense technology. And this is all very exciting stuff. So the question really at this point is, they're burning through quite a bit of money. They burned through at least almost $1 billion in cash in 2025. We're looking at projected losses at $1.2 billion in 2026. So that's why they had to raise all this money, $5 billion. And the question is this really an investment in the future, or is this, losing money for the long term? We won't know for quite a while. Now, the bull case for the company is really this Golden Dome concept and the existing contracts that they have. They are in league with General Atomics, which so they're in good company. And there is a $20 billion Army contract coming up, which some claim they're not really obligated to spend all that money. The Army could spend $87 million of that $20 billion contract and walk away. So that's a little bit of a question mark over the company. But I think, given the way the war has changed with the, certainly with the action in Ukraine and the action in Iran, I don't think this is one of these companies that's going to go quietly into the night. This seems to be where the innovation is happening, and it looks like the small companies are definitely taking a lead over some of the more traditional suppliers of military equipment. There has been some question of whether Anduril's weapons work in the field. There was a 2025 Wall Street Journal investigation that found some failures. Not certain how much we need to worry about this. I think, certainly with SpaceX and probably with General Atomics, we have found that there is a high failure rate when you're innovating on these new products. The other issue is, whether the an Anduril executive who's gone into the number 2 slot, number 2 civilian job over at the Undersecretary of the Army, a guy named Michael Obadal, whether that's a conflict of interest. I think, we have to find out. He has agreed eventually to sell his stake or divest his stake or however he's going to deal with it. But, the question is this one of these conflict of interest or no conflict, no interest sort of situations? The revolving door between industry and the Pentagon is pretty famous. So I'm not sure that's a deal breaker there, but it is a bit of a dark mark on things. So the real bet here, I mean, in the short term, the question is, you have Anthropic CEO saying that we shouldn't give too much autonomy to the weapon systems for firing themselves. The way forward for all of these systems is that they do have a fair amount of flexibility in when they fire. So there is that tension in there. But I think the real question for Anduril is, what happens if the Golden Dome, the great $1.2 trillion Golden Dome project gets canceled, maybe in a new administration? The likelihood, I think, is pretty low. I think certainly the recent military actions have shown, I think everybody, including people who live in Moscow, that, we do want some sort of defense against missiles. And, missiles are cheap to make and easy to fire, and we need something. Everyone needs something to sort of, work against that. So this is quite a company you definitely want to be following. It's a bit. It's richly valued. There's no doubt about that, especially when you compare it to something like a General Atomics, which has been in the field for a lot longer and has a very successful track record. So that's one we want to watch. I think if I had to take a guess, I would say it's richly valued at this point. There is some political risk that Golden Dome gets toned down, canceled, shelved. In a new administration. There's a bit of a political risk overhanging this one. So the small one is, moving on to the small one, is Frame Security. They just raised $50 million. They're coming out of Stealth. And these are the Wiz alumni exiting Stealth. And they built a cybersecurity company that generates deep fakes of your coworkers to test whether employees will fall for AI phishing attacks. They claim to have 20 to 30 companies, and no need to go into them right now. It's not that many. And so it's an interesting, field that they're going in, a little bit like the radical numerics that we covered earlier. They appear to be creating the problem. It looks like a solution looking for a problem to solve. The big question is, if security awareness training doesn't work, why is it better to subject your employees to a bunch of deep fakes to try and have them figure out which is which? It's unclear whether that's really a valuable training tool. So maybe it's even a little worse than creating viruses and then creating solutions for them. So obviously AI-generated deepfakes are a big problem, but subjecting your staff to a bunch of deepfakes in the hope that you'll train them out of falling for deepfakes, I don't know, it just doesn't quite sound like the way to go for me. I suspect what this is an initial gambit. This is sort of opening up the door. The co-founder, Tal Shlomo, he sold Wiz to Google for $32 billion in March of this year. So I think these guys are pretty clever people. I think this is the opening gambit. I think we'll see more products coming out of this company, perhaps using the AI deepfake angle, but I can't imagine this is the final company. So I would say that the deepfake thing is interesting. It definitely puts them on the map, but I'm not sure this is actually what you'll end up buying if you look into this company. And now let's go for the weird one, Crew Carbon. They've raised $30.3 million in a Series A. And the sort of the quick and dirty of this company is that they're using crushed minerals and they dump it into wastewater treatment plants to capture CO2. Obviously, this is an area that excites many environmentalists. How can we remove CO2 from the air? This is removing it from the water, the wastewater. So there is a little bit of a question over this one as to whether this is really CO2 removal. I mean, it is CO2 removal, but is it the right CO2 removal that everyone's excited about? Microsoft was really represented most of the market. I think they represented roughly 90% of all the carbon removal credits that were purchased last year in 2025. They've announced earlier this year that they're sort of pausing those carbon removal purchases. They may come back to the market. It's not clear. So one of the questions, in addition to whether they can ramp up to the contracted amount, which is many multiples of what they've done so far, is the market still there? With Microsoft moving or readjusting, let's say, what they want to buy in terms of this, is the market still there? Is there still a market for this product? Is this just and the other problem is, is this a clean water technology, or is this really a carbon removal product? And I guess that's something for the environmentalists to figure out. On the actual contracted gap, they've removed in 2025. They removed 104 tons, for verified carbon credits, and they have an offtake agreement that commits them to almost 72,000 tons a year by 2030. So that's a massive increase. They'll have to really ramp up. It doesn't sound like it's going to be that difficult. They seem optimistic about it, but we really need to monitor that angle. Even if it isn't carbon removal in the sense of removing it from the air, it is still something I think that people will get excited about. There's a little bit of an argy-bargy about whether the crew needs subsidies or not. They did get a non-dilutive grant as part of the Series A, $6 million of it. I don't know that that's I don't know if that's really an issue one way or the other. I think if you see a grant like that, you take it in these situations. So that's a weird one. It's definitely a technology that I would have said would be much popular a few years ago, much more on topic. But I don't think it's going to go. I don't think it's going to go away, and I think they could be cyclical. We could see that one come back. So just to sum it up, we have our large company, Anduril, that's got a huge valuation of $61 billion. They just massive raise, huge multi-trillion, $1 trillion government programs that might be coming up, and a bit of a philosophical clash with Anthropic's CEO. We have Frame Security, which is, doing some unusual stuff with deep faking your coworkers. And you've got Crew Carbon, which is, is this even carbon removal? So there's your big, your small, and your weird. Thank you for listening. As always, if we got something wrong, the purpose of this podcast is to shed light on companies where information is not fully complete. So if I got anything wrong, please contact me. Please let me know, and I will make adjustments in the future. In the meantime, we'll keep looking for interesting companies in the venture capital space, in the private company space, and hopefully we can bring some interesting ones to your attention. Thank you very much.